Hey, take a look at the phone in your hand, or that coffee you're drinking. Ever stop to think about how it got to you? Well, there's a really good chance it came by sea. I mean, a whopping 90% of everything traded globally travels on a ship. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this, well, invisible legal system that makes all of that possible. We're talking about shipping law.
Okay, so picture this. You're in the middle of the ocean, nothing but water for miles, and bam, two ships collide. One is flying a Panamanian flag, the other a Liberian one. And the cargo? It belongs to a German company and it's on its way to Brazil. Talk about a nightmare, right? But it's not just a logistical mess, it's a legal one. Whose laws even apply here? Which country's court gets to decide who's at fault? This is exactly the kind of chaos that shipping law exists to prevent.
All right, so to get our heads around all that, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the basics. What even is shipping law? Then we'll get into its main goal, this big quest for uniformity. After that, we'll look at the rule books, both the official ones and, interestingly, the unofficial ones. And finally, we'll see who's actually writing these rules. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, the puzzle. Before we can put all the pieces together and figure out that collision, we've got to understand what the pieces are. So let's start with the big question. What is shipping law really?
So, at its heart, shipping law is all about the business side of things, the rules for carrying goods and passengers by water. It's private law. Now, you might have heard of the law of the sea, but that's something different. That's public international law. It deals with big picture stuff like, where a country's borders are in the ocean or protecting the marine environment. Here's a simple way to think about it. Shipping law is about the contracts between companies, while the law of the sea is about the rules between countries.
And just to make it a little more confusing, believe it or not, people don't even use the same words for it everywhere. If you're in a common law country, say the US or the UK, terms like shipping law and maritime law pretty much mean the same thing. But if you go to a civil law country like France, maritime law is this huge, broad umbrella that covers everything, private, public, the whole deal. This little bit of confusion right at the start really highlights why the industry's main goal is so important.
So, okay, you've got different legal systems, different definitions. How do you stop things from turning into total chaos? Well, the entire international community is focused on one single powerful idea. They're on a mission for uniformity.
Yeah, and this question really cuts right to the heart of it. Think about that collision again. The outcome of who pays for what shouldn't just be a lottery, right? It shouldn't depend on which country's flag is on the stern. For global trade to actually function, you have to have predictability. You need consistency. Businesses have to know the rules of the game before they start playing, no matter where in the world their ships happen to be.
And this quote from Ignacio Arroyo just nails it. He says, "Having different legal solutions to common problems is the worst way to achieve growth." This is basically the thesis for this whole explainer. Uniformity is the key word. Without it, global trade gets stuck in a swamp of risk and uncertainty. So the entire maritime world, it's all built around this one central mission, making the rules the same for everyone.
So how do they actually do that? Well, the first big tool in the toolbox is what's called an international convention. Think of these as the official rulebook. They're basically formal binding treaties that countries sign, creating a kind of global legal code for shipping. But, and this is a big but, creating this rulebook is a total marathon, not a sprint. The process is long and it's complicated. First, someone has to identify a problem that needs a single rule. Then, you've got working groups of experts drafting things up. After that, there's a huge diplomatic conference where all the countries get together to debate and vote. If it gets approved, countries then have to go home and officially sign and ratify it, which means making it part of their own national law. And only after all of that can courts actually start using it. So how long is this marathon we're talking about? Get this, on average, it takes about 20 years. 20! From the initial idea to a rule that a judge can actually apply in a courtroom. Now that super slow pace is intentional. It's designed to make sure everyone's on board. But it also shows you just how challenging it is to make laws that the whole world can agree on. And the amount of stuff these conventions cover is just massive. We're talking about everything. How you register a ship, how you get a mortgage on one, the rules for seizing a ship in port. It doesn't stop there. They cover safety standards, labor rights for sailors, what to do when goods are damaged, how to handle collisions, salvage missions. It is a complete legal universe built to handle pretty much anything that can happen at sea.
But think about it. That 20-year timeline is a huge problem, right? Business moves way faster than that.
So, because the official rulebook can be so slow, the industry itself came up with a workaround. They created their own set of rules, a faster, more flexible, unofficial rulebook. And here's the crucial difference between the two. Conventions are top-down law. They come from governments and they're legally binding on countries. But these private documents, they're bottom-up. They're created by the industry, for the industry. And they're only binding if the people making a deal, like say the company shipping the goods and the company owning the ship, agree to use them. It's basically law by handshake, not by government order.
A great example of this is something called the York-Antwerp Rules. They deal with a really old and cool maritime idea called general average. So, let's say a huge storm hits a container ship. To save the vessel, the captain has to start chucking some containers overboard, and one of them is yours. General average is the idea that says, hey, your stuff was sacrificed to save everyone else's, so everyone else chips in to cover your loss. It's a principle of shared risk. And the York-Antwerp rules? They're the globally accepted way to calculate who owes what. And get this, many experts argue that these private rules have actually done more to create uniformity than a lot of the official government treaties.
And then there are Incoterms. Now, if you've ever dealt with international shipping, you've definitely seen these little three-letter codes, like FOB or CIF. They're not just random letters. They're a kind of global shorthand. For example, FOB stands for free on board, and it basically means the seller is off the hook as soon as the goods are on the ship. CIF means cost, insurance, and freight, and that tells you the seller is responsible for all three of those things until the goods get to the destination port. This system is absolutely vital because it makes it crystal clear when the risk and responsibility passes from the seller to the buyer.
Okay, so we have two rule books, the official government one and the unofficial industry one. But who writes them? Who are the architects of this whole system? Let's take a look.
Well, the rule makers pretty much fall into two big groups. On one side, you've got the intergovernmental organizations, or IGOs. These are made up of countries, so you can think of them as clubs for governments. They're the ones who create the official conventions. And on the other side, you have the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs. These are groups of private companies, lawyers, and industry experts, and they're usually the ones behind that unofficial rulebook we talked about.
So when we talk about the government side, the IGOs, there's one name you absolutely have to know, the IMO. That's the International Maritime Organization. It's a part of the United Nations, and it is the main global body setting the rules for safe, secure, and environmentally friendly shipping. I mean, their slogan basically says it all: safe, secure, and efficient shipping on clean oceans.
And the way the IMO is set up is pretty logical. It's designed to take big ideas and turn them into super detailed rules. So you've got the assembly, where all the member countries meet, and a smaller council that acts like an executive board. But the real heavy lifting? That happens in the committees. You've got a legal committee, a safety committee, and so on. And then you have subcommittees below them that really dig into the technical, nitty-gritty details.
Now, on the private, non-governmental side, the most important player has a French name, the Comité Maritime International, or CMI. And these guys have been around forever, since 1897. It's the oldest organization in the game. Back in the day, the CMI actually wrote a lot of the big international conventions that governments later signed into law. Today, the role has changed a bit. Now they act more like the expert advisors, working closely with groups like the IMO to help shape the future of maritime law. So, let's bring it all home. What seems like it should be total chaos out on the open ocean has been painstakingly turned into a system of order. Over the last century, this incredible web of official treaties and practical private rules, all built by these dedicated organizations, has created the stability and predictability that makes global trade even possible. It's the system that underpins, well, pretty much everything.
And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. This whole system, as we've seen, was built slowly, deliberately, over decades. Remember that 20-year average for a new rule? But the challenges facing the shipping industry today are coming at it fast and furious. We're talking about automated self-sailing ships, the massive push to decarbonize, and all sorts of new geopolitical risks. So the question is, can this slow, steady legal machine possibly keep up? Can it adapt fast enough to keep the world sailing smoothly? Honestly, that's a question nobody has the answer to yet.